The average PT practice owner thinks that they're a better physical therapist than every other physical therapist out there. And the funniest thing is they think that actually matters. And they think that that's the most important thing that they have to offer. And they think that their 30 years of experience make them special. And what I quickly realized, even before I was a physical therapist, was that it's not the physical therapist that matters. It's the patient experience that they get when they come in the clinic.
Kick it.
Welcome to Strata Stories. My name is Thomas Schreiber, and I'm Director of Marketing here at Strata. Strata is a single EMR platform and revenue cycle management service for physical, occupational, and speech therapy practices that helps you achieve a 99.99% reimbursement rate. On today's episode, Paul Singh, the CEO of Strata, talks with Justin Stiver, the owner of Total Therapy Florida. Justin grew the practice from one location to now 7 locations across Florida. Paul and Justin talk through how to market your clinic to future generations, tactics for developing incredible patient experiences, and why you must get out of the trenches if you're a clinic owner and ever want to sell your business. If you'd like to learn more about Strata, head over to stratapt.com or email us at hello@stratapt.com. Now, without further delay, here's today's episode.
Let's start at the top. Give me like the 1 minute overview on like Total Therapy. You know, what's the rundown?
So Total Therapy got started in 2018 by me. Basically I was a relatively new grad physical therapist. I was out for a few years, and but the dream of Total Therapy happened before I was even out of school, because when I was shopping around looking at places to work, I just couldn't find a clinic that I fit in with. They weren't doing things the way I wanted to do it, and I was, and I knew that they weren't going to want to do it. And I definitely didn't want to get into the situation where I'm butting heads with somebody trying to make their business into something that it's not. So I was working as a tech through PT school for a guy who lived in Ohio, but he still had an office down here in Florida, in Osprey, Florida. And he kind of said, "Look, you stay on with us after you graduate, and when you're ready, we can just make something work." So it was a nice deal for me. And after about 2 or 3 years, I decided it was time. And that's when Total Therapy Florida started. I quickly realized that in order to do things the way that I want to do them, that we had to have some growth there. If you want nice things, if you want excellent processes, great team behind you, you can't have a little mom and pop that does $350,000 worth of revenue every year. You have to grow. And that's kind of what sparked the growth with Total Therapy Florida. And now today we're up to 7 locations and expanding still, and everything's great. And we have a great reputation, and I couldn't be happier.
That's awesome. So just to kind of to dig into that a little bit further. So 2018 is kind of the key date there. So you're, let's call it 5+ years into this now. Most people that I ask about like what the next 3 to 5 years of the industry looks like, they'll kind of give me like I don't know, if they have an opinion at all, it's probably something they Googled. You can like clearly tell they read it on the internet, but you actually have some really interesting thoughts here. So I don't want to steal your thunder. So, you started this thing 5+ years ago. Based on here we are, middle of 2023. What's your thought on what does the PT business look like, 5 years from now? Just what's the guess right here, right now in the middle of 2023?
We're at kind of this part in our growth where I'm looking at the next 5 years and saying, do I want to continue on the growth pattern I'm on now, or do I want to kind of hang around the 7 to 10 clinic mark and really fine tune our processes? And I think going up to 10 clinics, we're still a small business. I still know every person that works for us. I still love to treat, and we're agile, and our team's proud of that right now. And I'm kind of staring at some of these elephants in the room, like the big franchise, model companies, that a lot of my therapists that I'm hiring right now are coming from these places and saying how much they hated working there. And I have this fear of turning into that down the road. So I'm kind of at the point now where I'm trying to say how can I continue growing without losing the aura or the coolness or the whatever you want to call it that makes our team have such a loyal base that loves to be Total Therapy Florida.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't want to like name names and get ourselves in trouble here, but I think everybody knows probably what you're talking about with the franchises. Um, let's talk about, you know, and again, I'm probably not going to make any friends over this, but you and I have sat across the dinner table from each other a couple times, and putting aside the fun that we have, you've got some really interesting thoughts on sort of branding and marketing as as a clinic owner that I think are pretty unique. Like I think a lot of practice owners, and I'll say this assertively, and you can kind of deny this if you disagree, but like I think a lot of practice owners love the craft, the craft of treating patients and that, and then sort of everything else in terms of operations, finance, marketing, branding, all that's kind of like, ugh, I don't want to do that. And so it all kind of gets left to the side. But particularly as it relates to branding and marketing, I feel like you're ahead of the curve in terms of the way you're thinking about branding and marketing. As a PT, as a practice owner, all that. Can you just talk about that a little bit? I'm trying not to steal your thunder here.
Yeah, no, it's fine. What I kind of gather from the physical therapists that I know and have met, that the physical therapy practice owners, and I'm just casting a broad net here, so I'm sure I don't want don't say that's not me, but
there's 100% chance we're going to get hate mail on this for sure. So we might as well just have some fun with it.
they think, and I'm going to make enemies here, but the average PT practice owner thinks that they're a better physical therapist than every other physical therapist out there. And the funniest thing is they think that actually matters, and they think that that's the most important thing that they have to offer. And they think that their 30 years of experience make them special. And what I quickly realized, even before I was a physical therapist, was that it's not the physical therapist that matters. It's the patient experience that they get when they come into clinic. And so when I started Total Therapy Florida, that was our number one thing that we were trying to dissect and almost, is the patient experience. And we tried to say, how can we make the patient experience great? And it can't be tied to one person, because that's honestly you're screwing yourself when you have a patient that needs to see you only. And it's not good for the business. It's not good. And it's a lie to the patient to make them think that they need you to get better. They don't. They need guidance, and they need a good patient experience that makes them leave feeling good, like what they just received was valuable. And if it is valuable, they're going to come back in. And the thing with physical therapists is 90% of what we do on a daily basis is not rocket science. And it's honestly, it could be done with someone that's not nearly as trained as what we are. Now, 10% of what we do is very strategic and skilled, and that's very important. And those excellent PTs that have been out for 25 or 30 years, that 10% is great. But if you're missing on that other 90%, then your patient's not going to come back because they didn't feel comfortable. They didn't feel like they got value there. And just making the patient like you, honestly, is more important than how skilled of a physical therapist you are. Because if they come in 15 visits and they do their exercises and they get functionally stronger, they're going to feel better and they're going to have a great outcome. If you don't connect with that person and they stop coming after 3 visits, they're not going to get better and they're not going to have a good outcome. They could be with the best physical therapist in the world with 3 visits, or a mediocre physical therapist for 15 visits, and the mediocre physical therapist is going to have a better outcome. So convincing our team that that is the most important thing has really has been what has allowed us to grow with such a strong brand and a strong reputation. To I think we're at 35 or 40 physical therapists now.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. We're going to have probably some haters or enemies on this one, but I think that's the key. That's the most insightful piece right there. And I agree with it, is that, the practice or the skill itself is a commodity. And the minute you can, like, I think if somebody was listening to this and feels triggered by that statement, if you can just put that aside for a minute, I think the reality, though, is that from a patient standpoint, that's really not a differentiating factor. Like, I have never been a PT, but I can tell you that, like, I've gone to the same primary care guy for 40 years. I could care less what his certifications are. I just like hanging out with him.
Right.
Yep. And I think it's such a small thing, but it is the thing. In the world that I come from, I'm not from healthcare, but it's like what I like to tell people is, and I see some similarities here, is that, like, I tell people that, like, capital, deal flow, and judgment are what most people think makes a good investor. But the reality is that capital, deal flow, and judgment are table stakes. You got to just be able to do those things or have those things to play the game. The real differentiator is access. Do founders actually like you? Because when something gets competitive or problems occur, the likability, that harder to measure thing, is the differentiator. And I think that's kind of what you're saying here.
It carries right over. We're in the services business. And that's how all services businesses work. You have to have, like, I forget how you just said it, but that's the table fare, right? Being a physical therapist that's not a bonehead is the table fare. Okay. And what makes a great physical therapist is someone that has that and has that X factor to make the patient buy in and like them. Now, what makes an excellent physical therapist is maybe one that is a great skilled physical therapist and has that X factor. Those people are excellent, but the patient, honestly, the patient doesn't see that. Maybe the physical therapist you work with can pick that out, but the patient doesn't care or doesn't know the difference between a great and an excellent physical therapist. And honestly, like, I don't practice all the time. My physical therapy skills are rusty. I still fill in every once in a while. And the patients think that I am the best physical therapist is because I can talk really well and I can get them to like me. But I say, like, I don't practice much. Every physical therapist that I have working for me is more skilled than I am when it comes to all the physiology, all the biomechanics, all those things. Because I spend 90% of my time marketing and branding and networking, and I don't do it in the actually doing physical therapy anymore. So I'm rusty. Yeah. Now I think going back, I kind of went off on a little tangent there and didn't really answer your question, but
all good.
But my point to that whole spiel was by tackling that hurdle first of being able to make the patient happy with any physical therapist they see, because they all know what's involved in the patient experience. It's allowed me to really pull back and of the clinical care and work on the business itself, the marketing and the branding and the networking, and the growth and the strategy, which I think is the Achilles heel to most owner operators. Is they spend so much time in the clinic, in the trenches, that they can't take their head up to do those things. And before you know it, 25 years has gone by, and where are you at?
Then they're in this awkward situation of they're stuck in the business. It's hard to sell that, and it's sort of a tragedy. Not that my opinion matters or whatever, but for context, I think one of the reasons why your opinion is really interesting to me, and I say this with all the, I understand that, like, you're a client of ours and it's in my best interest to, like, stroke your ego, but I genuinely don't mean to do that. But here's the deal. Like, I think that's what's interesting about the way you're operating that's different than anybody else I see in the client base that we have right now, and frankly out there on the internet right now, is the fact that, like, whether or not you would say it this way, I think the fact that you seem to always be thinking like 3 to 5 years from now, I think that that's so interesting, because a lot of practice owners not only are stuck in the day to day, like you said, but they're also like acting as if the patient demographic isn't going to change over the next couple of years as well. Like, in broad strokes, if you keep building for boomers and you're not ready for what Gen X or Gen Y wants over the next 3 or 5 years as they age in, you're going to be way behind the curve. And I think the reality is it's not an either or. It's not do this or that. It's an and, unfortunately. Like, whether we like it or not, Gen Y or millennials are just a few years away from really getting into the PT world and needing services much more. And like, we know that they look at social media to build trust. We know that they're probably using YouTube to figure out what's going on with their shoulder before they even come into your office, right?
Yeah,
and I just
absolutely.
think it's really fascinating that you're thinking way ahead of that, whether you know that or not, or whether you think about it that way. But talk to me about how you feel about that.
So I've been thinking about that since we have a very unique this industry, meaning not just physical therapy, but the private practice healthcare industry in general that accepts insurance has a unique, and you talked about this before, is that you can be a premium service brand and you can't charge the premium prices. You get the premium doctors to send to you, and you get the premium selection of clients, and you get to drop some insurances and get premium pay that way. But ultimately, you're still tied to the same model that the guy down the street does, and doesn't have nearly your costs because they don't care about having nice things and all that stuff. So what we're actually working on now, and it's just in its infancy, is figuring out a add-on to our business where we can start to capture that next generation of the physical therapy clients. And it's a lot of digital type of things going on. And because people want to, and it's not, I shouldn't just say it's Gen Xers or, millennials. It's even the boomers are, going onto YouTube now to search things, and they'll still end up in the clinic. That's the difference. Like, they'll still end up in the clinic pretty easily, because they want to go into the clinic and they're retired and they everything else. Which I think we'll always have as that age group stays there, but they're going to qualify you now, based on what your brand is online first. That's the big shift is getting content out there, and who knows, you might be able to build an actual business with this digital content, but it might just be for branding. Who knows where that ends up? But a lot of it goes back though to that. If you're treating patients all the time and you're putting out fires, and your company isn't set up to let you have the time and the freedom to pay attention to these things, you can't act on them.
So I'm going to just keep echoing that. I think you're right, and I think that most practice owners have a branding and marketing problem, whether they know it or not. And I think that not that this is the same, but it draws a lot of parallels. Like, I do a lot of angel investing in the tech world, and one of the things that's interesting, my wife and I are in like 3,200 other companies now, and it's like one very interesting pattern is that when I ask people why they think the majority of companies fail, they correctly say, "Oh, well, they ran out of money." Right? That's what they say. But where they then fail is, then I ask them, but how did they run out of money? And what tends to happen actually in the research is that really smart people, like in this case doctors, in that case like engineers and stuff like that, really smart people are interesting to me, because in the sense that when things get hard, they tend to kind of go back to the thing they know best. So in other words, like, the founder of a tech company that is going to fail today probably saw it coming 6 months ago. And rather than do the hard work of, oh, you know what, we probably need to pick up the phone 200 times a day and try to sell something, they say, man, if we only had one more feature, and then they like go inward and eventually run out of money because more features is what they think is going to solve it, because that's what they know. I see so many parallels here when we talk to struggling practices every day. It's like, it's hard not to immediately see the same pattern. You have these really smart doctors that then became practice owners, but then inevitably kind of stall somewhere in that first, second, or third year. They're kind of like in that in between. And it's almost always because like what they know is the skill, the trade, the stuff they do. And it's uncomfortable almost to kind of really address the root problem.
A lot of them even know what the problem is. They just, I don't know that they want to face it.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
Because when I talk to private practice owners, that I tell them, yeah, I know I should be doing that too. And I just, and I've known that for a long time, but I didn't act on it. And
yeah,
why does that happen?
Well,
I don't know.
Well, then they'll say that I'm too busy, right? But then in the meantime, you can make some small talk. And you're like, oh yeah, I totally watched Top Chef last night. And you're like, oh really? Okay, okay, got it.
And and I have to, I have to say that if PT is one business where you could open up, if you wanted to be an owner operator and have one clinic, and you wanted to have, it's funny because we were looking at this guy's office. This guy's practiced down in Punta Gorda, and he said, "Oh yeah, my wife needs me to be home by 2:00 on Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. So I shut my doors at 2:00, and more power to him if that's what makes him happy and that's his life. And then you can do that pretty easily in the PT world. You can open up your own practice, and you can be an owner operator, and you can do all the work, and you can have your wife sit at the front desk, or your husband sit at the front desk, and you can make a good, relatively good living and be very happy. But you got to be the owner operator.
Well, I think you got to be the owner operator, and you got to be really honest about what you're trying to build. Like if flexibility is the goal, then let's build for flexibility. And if dominating the entire state is the goal, then let's build for that. I think the real challenge is when people just aren't being truthful to themselves, and then they wonder why they look up one day and they're stalled, they're stuck in the business. And the real tragedy is they can't even sell it now.
That's what I was just going to say. And, unfortunately, the same person I'm talking about, they're like, okay, I make, the business makes $130,000 a year. Oh, wow. Okay, good. Let's break it down. Yeah, I only pay myself $30,000 a year because my house is paid off and my cars are paid off. And my kids are out of college, and I don't need to pay myself anymore. So, and I'm like, ooh, okay. Well, I got to pay a therapist $130,000 to run this clinic. So, your business is worth $0. No. I'll show you my tax returns. I made $130,000. Like, right. Geez, right. Man, I'm about to rip your heart out here. And
yeah. And here I thought you were such a nice guy, Justin.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. You and obviously, don't tell me anything I'm not supposed to know. Don't name names if I'm going to get in trouble. But like you've been on a couple different, you've been on sides of acquisitions where you've bought them and, rolled them up and grown. And then you've been on the other side where you're like, that's cool, but I'm not doing it. Just kind of like what you alluded to. So talk to me about what do you look for when you're acquiring a practice? I know that's a big question, right? But like, what are the rules of thumb? So what makes a practice valuable?
We've started de novo. The first one, obviously we didn't start de novo, but it was kind of like starting de novo because I was the clinic director, and, we got it for a very good price, from, so we didn't have to, walk anything back like you would have to if you bought something that was not yours already running. We've purchased one clinic. Let me think about this. Yeah, one clinic that was in business. The guy was in business for 30 years, and really, to be honest with you, it was mainly because of the building and that we bought the actual real estate, which is what really got us there. But we made him kind of feel special and say, we're going to pay you $100,000 for your business and $500,000 for your building, even though the building was probably worth $600,000. He wanted to sell it to a private practice physical therapist, so he wouldn't even put it on the market for fair market value. He only wanted to list that to a physical therapist that would buy the building and a practice. And it goes to speak for the passion that a lot of the practice owners have after running your own business for 30 years. You don't want to see that die, but I have to say it was the most frustrating 6 months ever to take over a client list of a person or practice that's doing things much differently than how you want to do things. And which is why now I'm so picky about, I'd rather just do it de novo, and or buy a practice that is very well run from it doesn't take the owner to operate. And we're looking at, okay, if we just bring our brand into this business, we can get these doctors to refer that aren't referring now. And, we can take it from this mark to that mark, and it's great. But I'm not terribly interested in buying operating businesses and that are run by the practice owner that we've just spent the last half hour talking about. It's more the ones, and those are typically the ones that aren't itching to sell either, because they're well-run practices and everything else. So, but I will say, like, quick funny story. The guy that I bought this one, this is a Sarasota office that I'm actually working out of now. His name was Ofer, which I the first two times I don't know if I had Frozen in my mind, but I was calling him Olaf, like the snowman from the Frozen movie. So I had to get myself out of the hole there. But we brought him on, and the deal was he's going to be available for 6 months on a consulting basis, and I think for up to 10 hours per week is kind of what I said. Not treating patients, just consulting with me about his business if I have questions. Well, my first patient with him was, so say an 8 o'clock patient. I walk into this room, and the guy's laying on his stomach, butt naked, okay, with all the lights off, all his clothes and his shoes stacked on top of the chair, and he's ready for his 45-minute massage, and I'm like, excuse me, Mr. Smith or whatever. I'm Justin. I'm the physical therapist that's going to be treating you. We just purchased Ofer's practice, and I think he told you that. I need you to put your clothes back on. And so that, come to find out, and I already knew this was going to happen. That's why, we really didn't pay much for the practice in general, because there wasn't a lot of value there. Is he was basically running a massage practice and labeling it as physical therapy, which is what so many practice owners do, because, hey, who wouldn't want a 45-minute massage and charge it to their Medicare benefit, balance? I mean, geez. So that was, it goes to show you, like, we probably only retain 10% of his clients, and that's where I think you can get in big trouble if you buy one of these small practice owners. And if it's not someone giving out massages, and I'm probably making it sound worse than it was, this just happened to be my first patient, but if you're not careful, you pay money for a client base that doesn't want the product that you sell. They want to go in there and get an ice pack and a hot pack and a massage, and that's it. They don't know that PT is not supposed to be that way, and they're better off. But you're gonna waste all your time trying to convince that client that you're better and that massages aren't the best way to make you walk better. So after about, I think it was 3 weeks probably, this guy Ofer, you couldn't phase the guy. He had a smile on his face all the time, and he would walk in and, "Hi, Justin, how you doing? Everything's great, man. This place looks great. I can't believe you made it look this good. And oh man, and After about 4 weeks, I looked at him. I said, Ofer, I spend every day convincing 5, 6 patients that they're not supposed to get massages for their physical therapy the whole time. I said, I'm so pissed at you that every time I see your face, it just makes me angry. So I said, go home and never come back in here. I don't want to see your face again. Just go home. I said, for the next 5 months per our contract, if I call your phone, I want you to answer, but I don't ever want you to walk in this clinic again. I'm sure that was like music to his ears, he's probably like, hell yeah. So he said, okay, Justin, I understand. And he walked out the door and I haven't seen him since.
When you started telling that story, I saw that going a different direction. You were going to talk about, giving the patient a great experience, but you heard it here first. You don't do massages.
Yeah. And now, to end this story with a cherry on top, okay? About a year after we bought the practice, because we kept the phone number the same, the fax number the same, so as people call in, we can capture them. Well, I get a voicemail on the weekend from this guy. He's screaming at the phone, and he's screaming at Ofer. Ofer, this is John with so and so, and I can't believe you would steal my business like that. I showed you massage chairs and the massage chair business. I told you about that, and I told you that I would be open to you investing in me, but now you went and opened up your own massage chair business, and I'm coming after you. You better lawyer up, and I'm going to get you. And I was like, holy smokes. So apparently this guy sold me this physical therapy business and then went and opened up his own massage chair business.
And he's just making enemies left and right.
Oh my gosh. I had to laugh. I called the guy back and I said, look, Ofer doesn't have anything to do with this business anymore. I'm just saying that because I sensed that you were going to like throw a Molotov cocktail through my window or something like that to burn this place down. I want to let you know that I don't like the guy either.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because again, there's just so many parallels. It's like, people think that the deal is the hard part, like when you imagine what it's like to do an acquisition of a company or whatever, they have these ideas like, oh, it must be like Shark Tank. You walked in, you impressed somebody, shook hands, and money just fell out of the sky. And the truth is that I feel like the deal is the easy part. Even most of the due diligence is the easy part. The hard part is like all the stuff that's not in the diligence packet. It's this stuff. Like you wouldn't have known, I imagine you wouldn't have known that the patients thought they were getting massages unless you actually were treating the patients. And that's the kind of stuff that, it wouldn't come up in the diligence. But you've been around the block now, so you see this stuff. Like, just switching gears for a second on the other side of this, like, you said it earlier, you've got 35 or 40 clinicians at across your locations now. That's got to be hard. What's that like? What's the challenge? Like, what's the biggest challenge of you 5 years ago it was just you, and now it's 40 other folks.
Yeah, I thought the challenge was going to be making sure everyone could provide that patient experience and be a quality enough person. And, because the market right now for physical therapists, it's not like you're choosing through 10 of them to get, 1 or 2. You're choosing through 2 to get 2, or, 2 to get 1, or 3 to get 2. You're not, you can't really be too selective. Now, the good thing is that all these people are highly educated and they wouldn't have got to where they're at today if they weren't. So it's really just teaching them the soft skills. So a lot of our training on onboarding is the patient experience, is the soft skills of being likable. And honestly, in our teams at this point, it's actually pretty easy because they're surrounded by a team of people that are excellent and they always step up to that quality, So if you put an average therapist into our clinics with 3 or 4 excellent therapists, it's going to be 2 months and they're going to be excellent. And I don't have to worry about it. The biggest thing is keeping the culture, fun and engaging. And that's what I spend most of my time thinking about how we can do it, whether it's it's just making people laugh and having that camaraderie with each other, and then having a place where, because the most therapists, almost all therapists, they care a lot about developing their skills as a physical therapist. Like, they love their craft, and they want to continue to grow, whether it's certifications or therapy skill sets. So we've put into place a team that specifically works on therapist educational components, and is that like mentorship program to build your skills as a physical therapist. That's internally. Um, and that has been probably the biggest, once we launched that and started seeing success with that, we've actually had quite a few therapists jumping ship from other companies, talking to their friends who work for us, saying, hey, if you work at Total Therapy Florida, not only do they do cool stuff, like, last year we did a Tampa Bay Lightning game where we all took a charter bus out there and had all kinds of coolers full of beer on the way up there, had a suite. We did that, that kind of stuff is important. It builds that up. But just little internal communications with like competitions and games and stuff like that. We spend a lot of time and energy to keep people engaged in the company. And I think that is where corporate, if I had to say the biggest thing where a corporate physical therapy office that has maybe 100 clinics goes wrong, is that they lose the ability to do that, or they don't do it. One of the two. Obviously, there are companies out there that have a high quality, high cultural, that are giant companies. So obviously it can be done. It's just that so far in the physical therapy space, I have yet to seen a corporate entity that engages their team like we do. And I think that's the biggest X factor that we have.
Yeah. I would agree. I mean, I think what's the word? That culture aspect is something that people don't talk enough about. Like, it's interesting. Again, I think one of the things that's interesting about you is that every time I meet you, like, you'll find a way. Like, you're always like, I can just see how your gears are turning, and it's so refreshing because it's different. Like, a lot of folks I talk to, again, because of the work I'm in, I'm talking to practice owners every day. 99.9% of them are really quick to tell you all the ways something won't work. And an example is they'll point at staffing issues. Gosh, it's so hard to hire a PT. It's so hard to do this. I don't want to lose that. Right. And I think like the one thing that you do different, that I think a lot of other people should maybe pay attention to in their own practices, is that whether you would agree, say it this way or not is irrelevant. I think that the truth is you're operating Total Therapy almost as if it's a media company that happens to be in the physical therapy space, whereas most other owners are kind of like, hey, we do physical therapy. We might have a social media intern. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but my point is that I think given where the market is going to head over the next couple of years, if it's not already there or heading that way, is that like you can't just bolt on marketing. It has to be like baked into everything. It's like what you talked about going to the event, right? Like you're probably all wearing Total Therapy shirts, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
You probably, and so the point is though, is that like I think the thing that most practice owners don't understand is that like they need to really start to embrace media and marketing and branding as a core tenet, because the other side of this is like every practice is playing a hyper local marketing game. For example, we are, at Strata, we're like a tech company, if you will, and we're playing sort of nationally, and we've got to like do search engine marketing, pay per click, social media, all that stuff at a national level. Whereas like, for example, with Total Therapy Florida, you don't really need to win the battle of like PT in Wisconsin, right? You don't have a practice over there. But I think that like, it's really fascinating that you guys are like in this hyper local marketing game. You know that, but I think a lot of other practices don't know that. And I think if people take any one thing away or just one thing away from this, it's that like at the end of the day, you've got to do whatever's necessary, I think, over the next couple months and years to make sure you start to differentiate for real. Because like, yeah, because it's interesting. In one breath, people will tell me, "Oh, hiring's so hard. PTs are so hard to find," right? And then in the next breath, though, it's like there's a lot of these practices already around. Like both things can't be true. We can't have too few PTs and too many practices. So somewhere in there is an excuse or worse.
Yes. So the thing that's true about that is almost every physical therapist out there is working right now. You know, they all have a job. There's not a lot of unemployed physical therapists, but so you're just not reaching that person. They don't know that you're looking for somebody. So and I guess going back to what you were just talking about is, yes, everyone will say what can't be done, but I think people fall into a trap by thinking there's some way it has to be done. There's some path that, because it's a physical therapy business, it has to be done this way. And this is just how it is. And there's really it's not that way. You look at your problem and you just reverse engineer it and you think outside the box and keep an open mind. Like for the staffing side of things, I mean, we immediately said, okay, what do we have that other people don't have? We have a great culture. We have nice facilities that people would be proud to work in. There's a lot of PT practice that don't have nice facilities because they would never justify spending $15,000 on new floors or $5,000 on new paint or $20,000 on new equipment. So they're going to, what could $50,000 could literally get somebody to have a nice place, but they don't do that. So now what happens is the physical therapists leave them and go work for someone like us because we do, and they want to be a part of that. And then how much does it cost to replace that physical therapist? You just lost $50,000 in revenue over 3 months because you were short one physical therapist during season, So I think when you start to think of things like that, then you have to, you can't be short-sighted. So, and then with the staffing thing too, like the way that we have solved our staffing problem, right now is we have excellent students that come in. Okay. So the student having physical therapy students is not only great for your business because basically they're with you for 12 weeks. You don't pay them and they can treat patients and actually bill for their services. But not only that, they're potential employees. So I was driving to a conference with my partner, Brian, and we're talking about kind of what headwinds do we have? Staffing. Okay. Yeah. Staffing. Everyone's talking about staffing. Well, why? And I said, we had 4 students this year lined up and 3 of them canceled because they couldn't find affordable housing in our area because everything is just rented up. So we're like, damn it. Those students, we could have hired at least one of those. Actually, the last round of 4 students, we hired 2 students. So I said, well, how do we fix that problem? And, so I called my mom, who's a realtor. And I said, Mom, is there any duplexes out there? Is there any multifamily residences? And, what do they cost? Okay. So we picked up we actually on the phone driving to this conference, we bought sight unseen this duplex that she had listed and said, let's buy this duplex. We're going to turn it into our student housing. And now we're going to advertise to every university out there that in Florida that we have free student housing, and if they let us interview first all of their students and pick the ones that we want to see, then we're going to give them housing for free while they're on their internship with us. And so we pay, our cost to hold that is, we pay maybe $500 to, $1,000 worth of interest every month on that property. And we're literally hiring, that first round hired 2 of the 4. So it's like, it costs us tens of thousands of dollars to hire and train staff. So why aren't we thinking of problems like that?
Right. I didn't even know that. That's such a cool story. But like that right there is a perfect example of like, I think that this industry, understandably, this industry is full of smart people. You got to be smart to go to school and do all that, right? But one of the side effects of that is you start to think in the box about everything. And I know I'm using cliches and stuff like that. But you inevitably go to get stuck in that box, and now everything's a problem. Everything's hard. There's 97 reasons why something won't work. And it's so refreshing and novel to kind of just say, I know what the problems are going to be, but what's the one, I just need one thing to go right. In your case, it's like, how do you differentiate? Well, you've solved a pain point. And I think that's super smart. I think that should be in everybody's playbook. I think the thing about this is that like, if more practice owners sort of embraced this media mentality, this marketing mentality, I know it's going to be hard because you can't attribute everything exactly, right? You can't exactly, it's so hard to do that. But the truth is it like breaks you free of a lot of these day-to-day problems in the sense that, you said something earlier about like, in some places, you have to interview two candidates and you got to, that's all you get. You got to then pick out of those two. And really the thing is for example, with good marketing, good branding, good forward thinking like this, you end up making the pool of applicants much, much larger. Like, I think that's the thing is that like the thing that most PTs don't understand is that whoever wins the awareness game, right? Whether it's in your local community or wherever you are, like whoever wins that local awareness game will dominate in almost in every measurable way, because anybody that wants to get recruited is going to come there. Anybody that wants to get treated is going to remember that name. Like,
there's a physical therapist that I follow who's been very well branded. His name is Mike Reinhold. He's got a physical therapy office in Boston, Mass, and he used to be the athletic trainer for the Boston Red Sox. And he's been doing podcasts and videos, and he has a huge following that he's built up over 5 or 10 years. And, he does something very interesting. When he wants to hire somebody, he puts out an advertisement for an internship for whatever 3-month internship. You have to apply with a video and let me know why you're the right candidate. His company's adding one therapist, and this is an internship for a possible full-time position. It's not even a full-time position, and this guy's getting hundreds of applicants to train and work at his place for free as an intern. And we're all trying to sponsor Indeed ads and pay headhunters $10,000 to find one applicant. And this guy's got the 500 to choose from because of the fact that he's built that media brand. And I watched that happen. I'm like, that guy is a genius,
Yeah, I mean, you and I have talked about various topics around this core idea every time we've met for dinner, and I think it's like it's the part where like people are either going to just like zone out at this point, or they're going to like really lean in and pay attention, and that is that like there's a power law effect here, and I think the reality is that you're going to spend the money anyway. One way or the other, you're going to spend the money. You're either going to spend the money on Indeed ads and sponsoring 5Ks or whatever, or you're going to spend the money on building a first-party relationship with your customer or your audience or your local community or whatever. The fact of the matter is you're going to spend the money whether you know it or not. So why not actually start to focus on building a first-party relationship as opposed to a third-party relationship? And so third-party relationships, as an example, are like doctor referrals, especially if you're not in a direct access state, of course. But, that's a really risky thing, like one day the doctor likes you and remembers you on the form, and the next day, she's thinking about something else, and, but so-and-so sent a nicer platter, so I'm going to send them there,
Or the doctor retires. I mean, we had a doctor just got in trouble domestically and had to move out of the state, and that's 30 referrals per month that dried up on us,
Mm-hmm. You had no control over it.
No.
Yeah. So it's like one way or the other. I think the nerdy part that you and I always kind of riff on, even if we don't say it specifically every time we meet, is this idea of like, how do you go from third party relationships with your patients to first party relationships? And like not to go totally off topic, I think if practice owners don't really start to think about this, they're going to find themselves in the same place that restaurants find themselves right now. So restaurants, as an example, one of my best friends owns a ton of them, like thousands of these things. And like 50% of his revenue is coming from things like Uber Eats and DoorDash and stuff like that, which is terrifying because it's gotten it's such a big part of his revenue now that he can't piss off Uber Eats or DoorDash or whatever. But on the flip side, he now has no direct relationship with those clients or those customers, and has no way to remarket to them or whatever. And he's at the mercy of now spending even more ad dollars. It's a lock-in effect. Yeah. And I think that's what's going to happen with PT over the next couple of years if people aren't serious about this, is that, you're going to become beholden to some intermediary that owns the relationship with the patient.
And there's a parallel there as well between insurance companies and Uber Eats. It's if Uber Eats decides one day they want to take a larger percentage, what are you going to do? Same with insurance companies with the physical therapy field. All of a sudden they say, Medicare, yeah, we're going to actually cut we've gone through I think around a 13 to 15% cut in the last 5 years, right? Average in the physical therapy assistant cuts plus the overall cuts. In an inflationary time of the last 5 years, we've gone through that kind of cut. That's I think what the private practice owner is looking at. And you're right. If you want to break those chains and get out of there, you have to have a first party relationship. And I've been thinking about that term, first party relationship. I didn't know what it meant when you said it, I think on your last podcast, but I was right away, I was like, whether it's physician referrals, whether it's the social media platform, you got to somehow appeal to these patients to make them want to come to you for something, not through somebody else. And that's what I've been putting a lot of thought behind that recently.
I think and again, I don't want to make it too nerdy and go down the path here, but if you want to see what's going to happen in the healthcare industry over the next 5 or 10 years, just look at the consumer world, and I think the reality is that, maybe that won't make sense to most people, but everything, we are all operating as consumer companies, patients. Well, anyway, you're nodding, so I won't riff on that too much, but I just think this topic is the thing that nobody's talking about. The fact is, you're already investing in content and you're thinking about marketing, and obviously we won't name names and get ourselves in trouble, but you've even paid the big well-known marketing firms to boost your firm locally. The reality is that the technology stack that's available to PT owners, what is considered sophisticated in this industry, wouldn't stand the test of daylight in the consumer world. I really think that, $1,000 to $2,000 a month for a practice owner should be enough in terms of paid marketing to really dominate the local region. Now, obviously those numbers might go up if everybody figures that out, but if history is going to be the same or whatever, the reality is most people are just going to listen to this and then ignore it and then wonder why their practice is going down instead of up over the next couple of years.
I think getting to the point, how do you pull the trigger? Then that's with this digital business that we're looking at with the studio type thing, is when something is foreign to you, it's really hard to make the leap. You can sit there and think about it and talk about it. One, the average, we already talked about, the average practice owner doesn't believe that they should give themselves the time to think about this stuff, or they don't do it. But then even if you do have the time to think about it, they're so specialized, and they grew up, they were in books their whole life, they took their degree, they don't have a diverse, they don't know a lot about a lot. They know a lot about a little, and it can be daunting, overwhelming. And I can share their pain. I've been knowing that I need to do this business for a long time, and just now, right now, are we actually making the launch? And a lot of it is honestly because of our conversations. I'm seeing what you guys are, with what you guys are doing with Strata, and I'm like, okay, here's the tailwind that I need to make this happen here. And but I think as much as a practice owner wants to do it, they're going to listen to this podcast and they're going to be like, I just can't, because I don't know how. and I won't spend the money to figure it out, or won't ask for help from the right people because they've never had to do that before. So why would they start doing it now?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's one of those things where like, there's no shortage of advice that's out there either, right? There's a million consultants and, that will gladly sell you their $197 info product to get 30 clients in 30 seconds with my secret plan,
Yeah.
And so like, it just sort of gives the entire industry a bad name. Anyway, but I think the core concept here, and I hope we can kind of keep doing this conversation over the next couple months too, and figure it out together. But like, I think the key concept is that like, you can't think of marketing or media as like a nice to have. The reality is, I think it's going to become the moat that's necessary over the next couple of years as this new demographic starts to age into the industry. And I may not be exactly right on this, but I think directionally it's true. And we've seen it in almost every other industry already, right? Like if you're not thinking about what that next generation is going to look like and how they think about things. I mean, sorry, just as an aside, I think one of the things that made Apple so successful is not only the core product. I mean, obviously, like I would say that Apple's products, love them or hate them, their products are the table stakes. They have to be good for people to spend that kind of money. But the real differentiation is in the experience and of it. Like, the best way I can say this quickly is there's no flimsy door handles at an Apple store.
Yeah.
You're going to walk in there and of course you're going to see things that are $3,000, $5,000. Holy cow, how am I going to pay this? Of course you are, right? But you will never like put your hand on anything that doesn't feel like $5,000 either.
Yeah.
Even if you asked to go to the bathroom, it's like going to have a heavy door handle. It's like when you go to like a Michelin starred restaurant, like the receipt is like thick,
Yeah.
And that experience is key. So anyway, I think it's really fascinating.
It's perceived value, right? Yeah.
That's right. All right, we are going to do this a lot more often, I think, because I think it'd be kind of fun to like hear how your efforts are progressing, and maybe we can kind of share notes as we do this. If people want to find you, like let's say they just want to kind of figure out what you're thinking about, maybe even talk to you at some point or whatever. Do they? Obviously, we've learned they can't come in and get a massage from you, but how do they find you?
I'm a pretty easily reachable guy. I mean, I let everyone have my cell phone number. I'm not that important yet to where I have to start screening that out. But email's the best. It's my first name, Justin at totaltherapyfl.com. I read all my emails and I respond to everybody. So that's probably the best way. But, and I think probably next time we have this conversation, we'll have some sort of a start on this digital business to where I can hopefully point people in that direction also.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Strata Stories. Strata is a single EMR platform and revenue cycle management service for physical, occupational, and speech therapy practices that helps you achieve a 99.99% reimbursement rate. If you'd like to learn more about Strata, head over to stratapt.com or email us at hello@stratapt.com.